What's up, guys? It's been a couple weeks since I've made anything, and that's just entirely because of personal responsibilities that have been taking up all of my time. I thought I would talk a little bit today about something that's really made a big difference for me, and I had a plan to get a whiteboard and do a bit of a diagram, and I actually do have the whiteboard for it. I couldn't find a whiteboard marker for the life of me, so I'm going to sort of entrust in my own voice and my own mind to make sense of this. So what I want to talk to you a little bit about today is what it means to take contradictory action. We could also call it opposites. So how do opposites work in personal development, and what is contradictory action? A lot of the time, there are things that we know we want to do. There are things that we want to be in better shape, we want to have a better job, we want to be making better money and a better career. Or a really big one for a lot of people, I've been seeing this a ton on like the INFP subreddit recently. There's a lot of this sense of, I wish I had a partner, how can I start meeting people, how can I do this, how can I do that? And there's a lot of this, I noticed there's a lot of this justifying the position we're in. And I think that's really important to have compassion for where we are. Like if we have no compassion for where we are and what situation we're in, it's a miserable life, isn't it? Because if you feel like you want a partner, if you feel like you want to have that better career, but you just hate where you're at right now and you just funnel hatred towards yourself, that's not a very good position to be in, and I'm not advocating that in any way. But I think where this can be a bit of a trap sometimes is if we continue to justify where we are too much, it's quite easy to get into an echo chamber in ourselves where we don't feel like we actually have the efficacy to change our situation. We don't really take responsibility for our situation past a point. Like if we're in shitty shape and, we're not working out, we're not eating healthy food, it's really easy to find reasons behind why that's okay for us once we're doing it. Now, you notice if you were actually eating healthy and you were actually working out, you wouldn't feel the need to justify the fact that you're not doing it like that anymore. But in the interim, before you have actually started making that shift, there's a sense that a part of you wants to justify that, right? You want to justify the fact that you're not taking action on the things, even though they're really important to you. And that can be anything, by the way. It's not just what I mentioned with relationships or with money, with fitness. These are just very obvious areas that everyone's going to understand, but it can be the same if you're undergoing deep spiritual work, personal development work, if it's depth psychology, or pursuing study for your degree, whatever it is. If you want the thing, but you're not doing it, the mind can have a tendency to find a myriad reasons behind why that's okay. And this is because there is sort of like a gear or a drive towards homeostasis in us. There's a gear to want to stay where we're at. So why is this? Why does that part of us want to keep us where we're at, even though we know at some level that it would be better for us to be in better shape, that we would feel sexier, that we would be healthier, that it would be better off if we had an extra $500 in our bank account at the end of every week? That we would have an amazing relationship with a woman or a man who actually cared about us, whom we cared about as well. Why is it that even though we know those things would be good for us, we still stay in the same position? It's that homeostasis drive. Your mind wants to come up with a point of view and come up with a perspective, and it wants to stay within that perspective and not really have to justify it and not really have to move. And some people, politicians, religious people, and even, I dare say, scientists. Oftentimes, some of these people do spend an inordinate amount of time justifying their perspective and their point of view. I've done it too. But deep down, we don't we don't really want to have to defend ourselves constantly, right? Right? Our mind wants to just sit where it's at and have this attitude of like, yep, this is kind of where I am. But when we get caught in this and we start believing it, that just becomes real. And this strange thing happens where it's kind of like if you saw someone who was struggling with something that you were struggling with, but then you've overcome it. Like, let's say it's working out again. Let's say you're in a pretty good rhythm and you're working out every other day. You're really, you're lifting weights, you're in good health, you're eating vegetables and lean meat, you're healthy. And then you see someone and they're like out of shape, they're overweight, and you feel great since you've been supplementing omega-3s and magnesium glycinate and lifting weights, and you feel like a whole new being. And you see them and there's this urge you get inside of you, right? There's this pull where it's like, man, I know that you feel like you can't, but if you did, you would be so much better off. And there's like this urge to help our fellow man in a way. But you know that they can't hear you. And this is what we do a lot of the time. We just assume that people are going to be able to hear us, so we just harangue about what the right thing is in our mind, and we don't really match it to them. And this is why I'm making this video, because what we need to understand is before we actually overcome any major limiting belief that we have or any major obstacle in our life, we first need to be able to identify what that obstacle is and what we actually believe now. We have to have a sense of, here's what I think now. Here's where I'm at now. Right now, I believe that it's too hard to work out. I believe that I'd prefer to eat Cadbury's Marvelous Creation, shout out, I love that shit. I'd prefer to eat Cadbury's Marvelous Creations on the couch at night than I would to not eat snacks or to eat cucumber and pepper and, and get up at 6 and work out and do cardio before I go to my day job. I'd prefer to do that. And sometimes I think what happens is we get into this pattern where it's like we don't really even admit that we really are in that position or we really want to do that. We're kind of just like, oh, yeah, it's nice, but it's just because I'm in a bad place. We have those reasons, we have those justifications behind why we are where we are. But once you acknowledge it, the good thing about acknowledging it is because everything is dualistic, right? Like everything has one and then it has another. The reason you can see my face clearly is partially because I have new lighting, but it's because it's light, right? Where if the opposite of having this light, you wouldn't see me, it would be darkness. You can't have sound without silence. You can't have light without darkness. You can't have speed without slow. Is that the right way of saying it? I don't know. You can't have up without down. Everything moves in a series of opposites, right? Everything has an opposite. Everything is dualistic. So once you can identify where you're at and be honest about the fact that you want to eat that Marvelous Creations Cadbury's chocolate on the couch, then you can identify what would the opposite of this thing be. So I'm in this position now, where would the opposite be? What would it be like if I was someone who ate cucumbers and peppers? And at first there's a limit to how much you can imagine. Because at first that part of you that wants to justify eating Marvelous Creations is going to be like, fuck you, I'm not giving up my Marvelous Creations, suck it. No way. Because that part of you just wants to say the same. So again, when we identify where we're at, we identify the homeostatic tendency. That's identified, and then there is a following sense of like, okay, what am I going to do then? Because I don't like where I'm at, but I don't like the idea of changing. And then there's kind of like a scale game going on. And the thing that actually allows people to psychologically change, the thing that actually allows people to grow and progress past their current point, is simply when the discomfort of being the same usurps the discomfort of changing. Right? The discomfort of changing can torture us for our whole life. Like, I know people in my life, there are people in my family right now, in my immediate family, there are people who cannot get off drugs. They cannot get off them. They justify it. Oh, it's not even that bad of a drug. Oh, it's this. But they can't get off of them. despite all the problems, despite all the suffering that my family has had to endure because of those choices, they cannot get off those drugs. Even though, I've had them cry to me and look me in the eyes and tell me that they want to stop, they can't. I've got the same thing with friends. I had the same thing, I was an addict for many years, and it made my life miserable. I had bulimia for many years, and it made my life miserable. It wasn't, in any way was it enjoyable. The pleasure that came from binge eating and purging, and the pleasure that came from taking these drugs was long since decimated. But I kept doing it, right? I kept having this strong sense of I kept getting pulled in. And it was because I didn't really even admit to myself where I was at. And at some level, there has to be a realistic shift between the pain of staying the same becomes so intense that you either die in that place or you overcome it. And maybe that's being a bit hyperbolic. If you're someone who's just struggling, because you eat a few too many snacks in the evening, maybe that's not exactly where you're at right now. That's cool. But for me, it was life or death, right? I was in psychosis, and even then I didn't get off drugs. Even then I still kept trying to figure out the right way to mix this substance with that substance. And then it would be, there has to be at some level a sense of I really genuinely do need to change. And there has to be an opposite. And that's when something inside of you, your soul, or however you choose to look at it, that's when something inside of you opens up and you actually see a new potential, right? In my experience, I'm not saying this will be the same for you, but in my experience, it didn't come through logical reasoning. It came through intuition. It was a sense of there must be something better. You're down on your knees. You really need to change. That's when it really comes about from what I've seen in people. You have to identify where you're at, and you have to be open to there being an opposite. You have to start taking contradictory action to where you feel like you're at now, to where you are at now. The weird thing about personal development, and this has been really challenging for me, so maybe this has stumped you as well. The thing about personal development that's really tricky a lot of the time is we often feel like we need the perfect way to move forward. We need the perfect strategy to overcome our difficulties now. We need the perfect thing, the perfect approach. The best workout routine, the best diet, wild caught salmon and 2 potatoes, sweet potatoes at that a day. That's all I'll eat. All I'll eat, bro. We often feel like we need to have the perfect thing, the perfect job opportunity. But where the problem comes in is that is such a significant leap away from where we're at now. And from one to move to the other, from that shift of, we spoke about dualities, from one thing to shift to the other end of the spectrum, to meet the opposite, you can imagine it like a table. You have to tilt it so you can roll to the other side. But it's not like you teleport to the other side. You roll. So you have to get momentum, right? You have to get the momentum of where you're at now, and you have to start moving towards where you would like. And then slowly, the weirdest thing happens. You start to get the sense inside of your fucking self that you can do more than you thought you could do. You start to get the sense that you are actually better than you think you are at doing what you thought you couldn't do. Right? All of a sudden, you don't feel like you're stuck anymore. You don't necessarily feel like you're perfect, but you don't feel like you're stuck in place. That learned helplessness, that sense of, I'm not going to be able to go anywhere with what I'm doing, that stops bothering you quite so much. You need to get some momentum. You need to start taking contradictory action. Let's go over some examples of contradictory action for common things that people struggle with. So let's go back to health. Let's say you're eating the fucking Marvelous Creations. I swear I'm not sponsored by Cadbury's. I swear I'm not getting paid to do this plug for them. Let's say you're eating those Marvelous Creations on the couch every night, right? You can't stop. You're just eating them every night. But you're fat. You've been doing, to be frank, you're overweight. You're unhealthy. You've been doing this long enough that you know that this is not working for you and that you would prefer to be doing something else, but you don't really know how to go about it. And after a while, after you keep doing it long enough, what usually starts to happen is that you get some flash of insight about what the opposite is. You know, if you're like not into personal development or spirituality or anything, maybe you don't get that straight away. Maybe it comes to you in a more veiled, unconscious form. But if you're watching this video, you're probably someone who's interested in this sort of stuff, right? You wouldn't get recommended this. YouTube is recommending this to you because you're interested in personal development and you're interested in bettering your life. And if you've watched this video up to this point, you're probably someone who's serious about wanting to do things better for yourself, which is amazing. You start to get a flash. You get a flash at some point of like, oh, okay, I could be someone who's actually fit and in shape. Or maybe if, like me, you've already been someone who's been fit and in shape, and then you find yourself on the couch eating candy. And you feel like there's a bit of a mind fuck there, because it's like, how did I go from here to here? Like, from here to here. After you get that flash of insight, and it starts to illuminate where you would like to be to you, sometimes you have to prime this, by the way. Sometimes you have to sit down and journal about it or talk it out loud to someone. Or you might get that insight through listening to me or through listening to someone who like spurs your mind in that direction. That like mental aura, like your aura starts to pick up on something. Aura, like if you don't like that word, excuse me. But something in your energy starts to pick up on an influence, right? Influence like that. You start to get a flash of like, okay, let's just put it in words. I don't want to be someone who sits on the couch and eats candy. I want to be someone who gets up at 6 o'clock in the morning, does 15 minutes on the bike, and then does some push-ups and does some squats. Maybe I don't need to be this big bodybuilder guy. I just need to be a guy who's fit, lean, and healthy, just to the point where when I'm with my girl and I take my shirt off, I look good, right? Where when I go to the beach, I feel all right taking my shirt off. Where I don't wake up with acid reflux feeling like shit and tired before I go to work. And you start to notice that opposite, and then what do? So what happens to me, what happened a lot of times, I'm like, I'm changing everything to get to that thing. Nothing's getting in my way. Nice police siren right outside the house. I am going to change. I'm everything. Nothing is going to get in my way. And you take that approach. Nothing is going to get in my way. Nothing. But then you've bargained for this massive shift, but most of your energy, because it takes time to gather momentum and to make a big change, so most of your energy is already caught up in being where you're at now. So what the fuck do you do? Because you just burn out, right? You burn out. You try to do it. You try to only eat cucumbers and salmon. And then that night, that's pretty soon, but for me, sometimes it's been that quick because I've done this enough times. Or maybe, in a week and a month, you're back on the couch eating chocolate, feeling worse than you were before, feeling more defeated. And it's because you didn't get momentum. You have to build up some momentum. So what might that look like? Well, maybe I don't get rid of the chocolate. Maybe I just do the exercise, but I don't get rid of the chocolate. And it's like you start to change the wheels in your mind a bit, because it's like, for me, I've done sneakies on myself like that, because the fact that I'm exercising every day, even if I'm eating the chocolate, the way my psychology works might be different for you, but the way my psychology works is like, if I'm working out every day, I don't want to be eating chocolate because it's reversing my results. It's like finding that leverage point within you where you can get that reality shift key is what comes into my mind when I think about it. To shift your reality, you need the right leverage. You need to find your reality shift key so you can switch your position. When I used to do jiu-jitsu, BJJ, something my coach used to say is that, you can always change position. You can always get a better position from where you're at now. Even sometimes when it's like, oh, he's going to win, I'm going to tap. It's like, you might tap, but you get a bit better. You learn how to move or navigate yourself just a bit better So next time you have, you've got a bit better, or you gain some points in the competition, whatever it is, you just have to do a bit better. You just have to get some momentum. And that all starts with contradictory action. So in this case, getting on the bike in the morning. Yeah, you might, don't worry about getting rid of the chocolate, but you're still getting on the bike. Let's say you want a partner. Let's say you're too afraid to go up and talk to a girl and say something along the lines of, hey, excuse me, I know this sounds a little bit strange, but I just saw you walking by and I thought you were really cute and I just wanted to say hello. And then you say, hi, my name's Nathan. And you hold out your hand and shake her hand. That's how I met my girlfriend. That's how I've met the most of the last 10 or 20 girls that I've been with. It has all been through cold approach like that. But there was a point only about 3 years ago where I was reading Models by Mark Manson. And I felt panic because I was like, there's no possible way that me, I'm not the best looking guy. I'm not a big guy. I'm pretty small. I've got a good sense of humor. But there's no way girls are going to, attractive women are going to want to sleep with me. And I had that as an absolute limiting belief. It was defining my reality. And the only way that I got over it was by literally, I made a chart and forced myself to go do X amount of approaches a week to the point where I got better at it. And now I love my relationship now. I wouldn't trade my relationship right now for the world. So what do you do? So are you going to go straight from being, I can't speak to look a girl in the fucking eyes at a grocery store, to being a 10 out of 10 with it? It's hell no, you're not. Definitely not. But what you could do is you could go from being where you're at now to going to ask a girl for the time. Someone you're relatively attracted to even. Not the hottest girl with the, a girl that you're relatively attracted to, or a man that you're relatively attracted to, if you're a lady watching this. You can just go up to that person and you can ask them for the time. Say, excuse me, hi, my phone died. I was just wondering if you had the time. And then just walk away, or just and then maybe next time it's a compliment. And then you build up momentum, and that momentum, because you're already going in that direction, at least for me, I go where I'm going. If birds of a feather flock together. If I'm already in that direction, that momentum is already carrying me. I tend to want to keep doing the thing. But if I stay with where I'm at now, thus I'm building momentum in the opposite direction. I just keep wanting to stay where I'm at now. You have to want to build that momentum in the other direction. So you have to identify the opposite from where you're at now and then start moving in that direction. What about meditation? Well, you get the idea. You're not meditating. Meditate for 30 seconds a day. Then you'll probably want to do a minute after a little bit. You have to identify your opposite, and then you have to start taking contradictory action. This is the only way. Honestly, everyone has different leverages and motivations. I'm a pretty selfish person. So for me, my motivations are all about me. I don't really I care about other people, but through empathy, not through sympathy. I care about other people emotionally, because it's that would be difficult for me, so I want to help someone else in that position. That's why I make these videos. But it's also because I want to prove to myself that I can make these videos. Do you get what I mean? It's that for me, it's not, you could be oh, you're evil. It's no, I don't care. For me, I'm doing what works for me to move forward. And you have to do what works for you. So if that's vanity right now, pursue vanity. If that's deep, meaningful, spiritual moralism, pursue spiritual moralism. But you have to do something that makes sense to you. If you're not doing something that makes sense to you, then your life doesn't really make sense to you. It's fucking, good luck. You have to start doing something that makes sense to you. So identify where you're at and then identify the opposite and start taking contradictory action so you can tilt the table and move towards the thing. The momentum will assist you more than your definitive attitude will a lot of the time, right? We often think, I've got to willpower my way through. It's willpower is definitely an effective strategy, but it's not effective if it doesn't have any fuel, right? It's like willpower is like a Ferrari with no gasoline. It's like a Toyota shitbox that has gasoline is going to move a lot faster than a Ferrari that has no gasoline. Look at momentum, contradictory action, as the fuel. Just take 1 or 2 actions right now. Stop journaling about how it's going to be and when you're going to get there. Just start taking the action right now. And you'd be surprised, because you can get yourself in a better financial position pretty fucking quick. You can get yourself in a better relationship position pretty quick. You can start meditating quick. You can read more books quick. Anything you want to do, really. It's all about compound growth. You're planting these seeds and getting momentum in this area, and over time, you're creating a bigger vision for your life. And then your life is naturally fulfilling. You don't have to hope that it's going to get good one day, because you know you're doing the things you need to make it good tomorrow. And you keep doing that. Hopefully this made sense to you. This has been a real game changer for me. I really wanted to try illuminate what contradictory action looks like in my classic waffly express this style. If you got value out of this, subscribe to the channel. Seriously, it helps me build it up, helps me make more videos, helps me kind of keep this going. Like the video, share it with anyone you feel will get value out of it. Comment for the algorithm. Just say fuck you or algo or whatever. And I hope you're having a beautiful day. And that's me.